Rugby Championship round number 2, the Dream Team. Some weeks when I do these Dream Team videos, it's a really hard choice because there are just so many guys who had amazing games. It's really hard to separate them. Sometimes I end up doing it by stats or by gut feeling or that key moment or whatever. This week, not so much in terms of the amazing. I think everyone will admit that both those games had a fair few errors in them. None of the four sides were all that fluid. There was a bit more on the defensive side that was pleasing than with ball in hand. But still, I've gone through and picked 15 guys. I've probably got more subs here than I've ever picked for my dream team because, yeah, sometimes it was just that impact that they brought on. And again, some of these guys I have had to go, you delivered in that key moment, so I'm going to let some other stuff slide. Some guys maybe failed at times, but overall had pretty good games. But yeah, I'll put the 15 guys up, go through a little bit about why I chose them, and then you guys can let me know your thoughts at the end. So I will start with the props. I've got the Aussie gear on today because they're the only team who won, by the way. I've gone with Scotty Seo from the Wallabies. A pretty good propping performance in a pretty messy game. 4 runs for 20 meters is always a very good return when you're getting more than a run a meter from a prop. So he's getting 5 runs a meter, which is 5 runs a meter, 5 meters a run. 2 clean breaks, again for a prop. What is he doing? 2 defenders beaten. He had a pass, 5 from 6 tackles. He didn't concede the ball once, so no turnovers conceded. And if you watch that game, that's a minor miracle in itself. No penalties conceded, where Figalo on the other side of the scrum for the Pumas conceded, I believe, 3. So scrum time was good for the Wallabies, so it's good to get an Aussie prop up here. Speaking of scrummaging, I have gone with Trevor Nyakane from the Springboks in the Dream Team. I equally could have gone with the Beast because he brought some punch to that lineup as well, but it was more the All Blacks loose head that was getting penalised. It was Tuangafasi when he came on up against the Nyakane who was getting penalised. So 2 runs, 4 metres. That's more like it in terms of actual prop running numbers. 6 from 6 tackles. I think the Beast had 9 from 9, so equally impressive. But the Beast went a step more, but still. He didn't concede any penalties, and he's mainly there because when those guys came on, the Beast and Trevor, the All Black scrum was under the pump. So, yeah, credit where that's due. I've seen interviews with Trevor Nyakane before where he's basically said you can do all the stuff around the park you like as a prop, but if you can't scrummage, it's pretty much worthless. So kudos to him for a good propping performance. Next, hooker, I've gone with Dane Coles. Again, another substitute who came on and really added some spark. So 6 runs, 35 metres, and you kind of come to expect that from him. He is a dynamic prop. And he's got some gas. He finds himself in those channels more often than most other guys in that number 2 jersey, although he was in 16. 5 passes, beat a defender, had 2 clean breaks. Again, clean breaks for front rowers. What's going on? He only had to make 1 from 1 tackle, so he came on at a period where the All Blacks were really on top, at least with ball in hand. So yeah, I've gone with Coles. I think he had 3 lineouts. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like when he came on, you saw a difference in the All Blacks, so I'm giving him a bit of credit for that. Locks, 2nd week in a row, I have gone with Rory Arnold from the Wallabies. Just the proper line-out guy. He's there for that job, although his other stats are all pretty good as well. 2 runs for 9 metres for a lock, again, is pretty good, although you'd like him to be running the ball a wee bit more if possible. 3 passes, although he got Nasarani there, so he can run the ball away, Arnold to do it. 10 out of 12 tackles is decent. 3 line-out wins, so he was the top guy for the Aussies in the line-out time. Also a line-out steal, which were relatively hard to come by this week. And he did concede the ball 3 times, so virtually everybody in that game had a bunch of knock-ons. He was not exempt, so it's far from a flawless game, but I've put him in there for the reasons I've talked about. Another guy, also from that same game, gone with Guido Petty. He had some pretty nice numbers. 7 runs for 24 metres is more what I was looking at from Arnold, to be fair. Bit more dynamic stuff, but again, Arnold was there to do his job. Petty's always been really athletic. So 2 passes, 2 offloads. Again, athletic. Sneeman is that kind of player as well. Retallick. 2 defenders beaten. 14 out of 14 tackles. That's immense. He did have 2 turnovers conceded. So as I said, I've pretty much got a caveat next to anybody from that Pumas and Wallabies game because they almost all, apart from CO, knocked the ball on at some point or dropped it or whatever. Also 4 line-out wins, so the top guy from the Pumas in that department. Good as always. Next, I've got another Puma in the loose forwards. I've gone with Pablo Matera. It seems like a lot of guys from that game, which was pretty messy, but again, have a look at the numbers. 9 runs, 16 meters for him is incredibly low. Usually he demolishes like 40, 50 run meters a game, but 16 run meters. 7 passes, 2 offloads. He's always got his offload game going. He beat a defender. He had 10 from 12 tackles, which is pretty good for him. He can go more, but 10 from 12 is decent. I think he had 1 turnover conceded, so in that game also relatively low. But he did have 3 turnovers, which was the most of anybody in that round. So in terms of getting at that breakdown, turning the ball over, he was your number 1 guy for this week. Not always known for that, like he's always been able to do it, but he's not like known as a David Pocock kind of specialist fetcher, but he's played open side before, so he does have that aspect of his game. Next, I've gone with Cocker Smith from the Springboks. He's going to be a wee bit of a controversial one because some people weren't that impressed with him. I think the people who weren't impressed by his ball in hand game. He had 8 runs for 26 meters, which is solid without being spectacular because this is what I mean. I think people were expecting his 40-50 as well. 2 passes, 2 defenders beaten, 15 out of 16 tackles. ESPN has him as the number 1 tackler for the Springboks in this game, so I'm giving him a lot of credit for that. He also managed the turnover. He did concede 2 penalties, which is not ideal. But again, it wasn't a perfect week for anyone really. But I still think he put in a pretty good shift in only his 2nd test match. So I'm not sure if he deserves some of the criticism he's got against the All Blacks in Wellington away. I still thought he did remarkably well for a guy in his 2nd test. Another guy who came in for a lot of flack is Matt Todd. Now, he was kind of being compared to Adi Savia a lot, and that was where a lot of the criticism came from. He's not Adi Savia. He's never been Adi Savia. He's not trying to be Adi Savia. Very different player. His job is, for the most part, to be very defensively sound and pop off the odd offload every now and again. He has improved his game with ball in hand over the years. I'll go through his numbers. 7 runs for 20 meters is not as bad as people are making out. Like, he wasn't doing Adi Savia stuff, but he was still solid. Which is kind of what he's always been with the ball. 5 passes, 2 clean breaks. I don't know how that's 2 clean breaks, but hey, I'll take that. 1 defender beaten, 2 offloads. Again, 14 out of 14 tackles. Didn't miss a tackle. Number 1 guy for the Kiwis with tackling. No penalties conceded and also managed the turnover. So in terms of doing the more core number 7 job, I think he did that pretty well. On to the backs. There was a few guys I could have gone with number 9, but I can't really deny this guy. There's just so much to like him about him at the moment. It's Herschel Yankees. He came on earlier than expected, that is for sure. Some of you guys in the comments said that he only came on because Faf de Klerk's HIA time expired. The New Zealand commentators actually mentioned that he failed his HIA, and then I think Rassie Erasmus has come out and said he failed his HIA, so it wasn't just the time thing. The New Zealand commentators initially thought they were trying to rush Faf de Klerk back on, but it turned out he'd failed his HIA. So he came on really much earlier than expected. Faf generally goes 70, 80 minutes, so I don't think Herschel was going to get that many minutes, but good thing he did. He had a try, which was pretty key. If you haven't seen that game, it was quite the difference maker. He had 1 run, and he scored a try from that 1 run. 4 meters, got a try from those 4 meters. 1 clean break, got a try from that clean break. 30 passes. ESPN has him at 3 out of 7 tackles, but Rugby Pass has him at 5 out of 5. Not sure which one to go with. Obviously, if I'm trying to sell him to you, I would say go with Rugby Pass's stats, 5 from 5, but I don't remember him being that defensively poor to miss to miss 4. I'm not sure. But either way, in terms of that kind of cometh the hour, cometh the man moment, that was pretty awesome. Aaron Smith actually said after that game that he wished he'd jumped to compete with Herschel for that ball, but he was worried that if he'd jumped that Peter Steff was going to just like barrel him. So he stayed kind of on the ground. Mistake. Either way, Herschel Yankee is a very popular man in South Africa right now, I am sure. I think he's getting a fair few plaudits over here as well. Next, fly half. I've gone with Andre Pollard. Was it his best game in a Bok jersey? Far from it. Some of his stuff around the park was pretty ordinary. He still has decent numbers overall, but he was definitely lacking a bit of clinical edge. Loose at times, as the note I've written here. He had 9 runs, 76 metres, which is actually very nice. 13 passes, a clean break, a defender beaten, 3 from 4 tackles. He did 2 turnovers conceded. He missed a relatively easy penalty. He, I think, kicked a cross kick out on the full at one point. But when you need a guy to step up and take an 80th minute conversion to secure a draw away from home, that guy makes no mistake. So a lot of props to him. I mean, overall decent, pretty good numbers. But that kick, you don't get much more pressure than that. And building into a World Cup, how good is it that we've seen him take an ultimate pressure kick and just not bat an eyelid? Very good stuff. It's good to know. Like, if you're an All Blacks fan sitting here wondering if Beauden would have got that kick, I don't know. Either way, Pollard. Midfielders. Gone with Geronimo de la Fuente from the Pumas. A kind of solid without being spectacular game. Obviously, with the Dream Team, you'd rather go spectacular, but it's not always on offer. De la Fuente is kind of that player. He's not a Laumapi guy. He's a playmaker, controller, defensive player at times. So 8 runs, 18 passes, so he's definitely a distributor. 18 run meters is, again, nothing that flash, but it's okay. Beat a defender, 14 out of 15 tackles is impressive for a midfielder, and he only had 1 turnover conceded again in that game where people were dropping ball left, right, and center. The fact that he made 18 passes, so he had a fair bit of possession, 8 runs, so he had the ball a fair bit, and only messed up once in the terms of that game is actually remarkable. So overall, pretty solid game from him. I've also gone with Goodhue from the All Blacks. I had to get another try scorer on here because there were few tries in the games this weekend. He had 11 runs, 56 meters. A lot of those meters would have been in his try. 9 passes and an offload. 2 clean breaks. Again, that's the try as one of them. 7 defenders beaten, which is actually pretty high. So he was being dynamic when he was running the ball. He had the try, like I said. 4 out of 5 tackles. 1 turnover conceded and 2 penalties conceded is kind of the black mark on his evening. But for the most part, I think in terms of his spot at the Rugby World Cup, he seems like a pretty solid pick, and he should be on his way to Japan. Outside backs. I've gone with another Wallaby here. I've gone with Marika Korobidi. He's another guy who kind of got partially slaughtered in some of the talk after this game. I don't think he was all that bad. I think he definitely added a bit of punch to that wing. He had 13 runs, so he was pretty busy with the ball. 77 meters, 3 passes, and one of them, he's not credited with a try assist, but it was his run that was used in the lead up to that Hodge try. A clean break, 6 defenders beaten. Again, that's pretty impressive. 6 out of 7 tackles. He did have 2 turnovers conceded, so there was a lot of drop ball in that game. Marika is not immune. This next one, Beauden Barrett. Overall, his numbers are pretty good. He's been criticised a fair bit for some of his positional play at fullback, saying he's no Ben Smith. Not many people are Ben Smith. And his goal kicking leaves a fair bit to be desired. I will not argue that with anybody. But overall, I think he adds a bit of dynamic play to the All Blacks. He helped them in that go forward. There's been a bit of talk as to whether his foot was on the line. I mentioned it in my match review as to whether they should have reviewed that. There's some side-on shots where you can clearly see his foot on the line, but I feel like that must be the camera angle, because from the straight on shot, which is kind of, there's no camera angle to be deceived by, there is a bit of daylight between him and the line. So it seems like he was in. 21 runs, 87 meters, so very busy at the back there. 6 defenders beaten is good. A clean break, 2 clean breaks, sorry. 22 passes, had a try assist, a conversion, a penalty. He did miss 2 penalties, and he did concede the ball 3 times. So far from a perfect Beauden outing. I don't think any of us are sold on that just yet. As Steve Hansen has said, the 10 and 15 thing with him and Mo'unga is a work in progress. Maybe we let Mo'unga do the kicking next time. Let's give that a try. But he definitely adds some spark. I don't think anyone can deny that. So to get that punch through with that gas of his, very nice guy to have in the team. Lastly, and perhaps my first name off the team sheet, was Cheslin Colby. That guy is probably man of the weekend. He was immense. So 5 runs, 46 meters. He didn't pass, 0 passes, but he did manage a try assist with that kick through. So that was a kind of key play in that game. You maybe wish the Springboks had given him a little bit more ball, like 5 runs, and he hasn't passed it, so he's only had the ball 5 times. Kind of wish he'd had a bit more. He still beat 3 defenders, had 2 clean breaks. I mean, 2 clean breaks from 5 runs is a pretty good return. 13 out of 15 tackles. Like, anybody who looks at him and goes, he's small, I'm going to smash him in the tackle, doesn't happen very often. He is a brave defender. He did have 1 turnover conceded. He got smashed a wee bit as well. The guy puts his body on the line. What can you say? He is a top player, and the Springboks should be very lucky to keep him playing, because he's just a top bloke. So, yeah, that is the 15 guys. Far from a perfect one. This week it was pretty tough, but I've gone through and made these picks for better or worse. As always, you guys let me know your thoughts. I will also mention, Taylor was also the other guy you could have had at hooker. I think they both, him and Coles, were pretty good. Guinea had a pretty nice game for the Wallabies at the back, ran the show with a bit more sharpness than perhaps Nick White. Liliafano in that game back for the Wallabies, he was also a potential other pick for 10. If not for that Pollard kick at the end, I think I probably would have gone for Liliafano, even though he played about 50 minutes. Issa for the Pumas got that try, played most of that game. I had looked at Mojano's stats as well. He got good run meters, good defenders beaten, but 7 turnovers conceded is maybe the most I've ever seen in a game, at least recently, or at least since I've been doing the channel. So, yeah, handling was a bit of a tricky one. Again, that's the 15 guys. We get a bit of a break now from the Rugby Championship, but we'll see what things have to come in that one last round. It should be pretty interesting stuff. As always, do let me know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.